Hello and welcome to My Opinion Archive. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the Spectres from the Mass Effect universe. So Spectres stands for Special Tactics and Reconnaissance, and they are agents entrusted with extraordinary authority by the Citadel Council, and the Citadel Council is the ruling body of the galaxy in the Mass Effect universe. The Spectres form an elite group of members from many different species, and their primary responsibility is to preserve galactic stability by whatever means necessary. And to do this, they are basically given authority to choose their own methods as to how to accomplish their missions, and are generally considered above the law, though their status as Spectres can be revoked by the Council in case of gross misconduct. Spectres usually work alone or in small groups, depending on what their tasks are and their personal preference. The organization of the Spectres has no command structure. The individual Spectres only answer to the Council, and in some cases the Council prefers not to know exactly how a Spectre's mission was accomplished. As previously stated, Spectres chose their own methods as to complete their missions, either by careful diplomacy or ruthless force. This has led to some people seeing the Spectres as potential risks, because they are not bound by normal laws. But other people see them as great heroes and look up to them, and see them as super agents who are always out there to save the galaxy. And although it is correct that the Spectres are outside normal law, as previously stated, the Council can revoke their status, and there are things in place in case a Spectre goes rogue, but the solution to that problem is just sending another Spectre. So now I'm going to give you my ideas about the Spectres. I find the idea of organizations like the Spectres interesting. I've always liked the idea in these fictional universes about people or organizations who are working outside the law or above the law, not in a criminal way, but as some sort of extreme version of police forces. Some of the things I found good about the Spectres is that they can move around and do whatever is necessary to stop big threats. But a problem that comes with this is that they are not accountable to anyone but the Council. And they can go quite far and cause a lot of deaths because they aren't accountable. And as I also previously stated, the Council sometimes doesn't really care how a mission was accomplished. So in reality, they might not be accountable to anyone. This could mean that a Spectre might become quick to take non-diplomatic or harmful options in situations, options that could cost a lot of lives, because that's the way they immediately see of accomplishing their mission, and they're not accountable to anyone, so maybe they don't think too far about the implications of what they are about to do, as long as the mission is completed. And because they're also usually dealing with big threats, they might justify this that I am saving the galaxy, so a few dead civilians might not mean so much in the bigger picture. Now, a good thing that is being done to prevent things like this is that there's a lot of background checks for potential Spectre candidates, and they typically have years of military or law enforcement experience before they are even considered. The screening process involves background checks and physical evaluation and a long period of field training under an experienced mentor. So there shouldn't be such a big chance for the Spectres being immoral and not knowing what is right or wrong. And of course there's also psychological evaluations to ensure that they are functioning normally, which is of course also a big way to avoid them suffering from mental illnesses or anything like that. But of course, throughout the games, we see Spectres with their enormous power and authority being corrupted, like Tila, who works with the Shadow Broker, and she apparently also has the authority to dismiss police officers from their own crime scenes, and that does prove that the Spectres have enormous power, and that this power can lead to them becoming corrupt because she doesn't see herself as a traitor to the Council for working with the Shadow Broker. She sees it as a viable option to completing her missions, that working with him give her information she can use. And since she isn't accountable to anyone, and presumably the Council hasn't even questioned how she got her information, she can continue to do it, and no one really discovers anything. Now, another example of this is the very first Spectre, Bilo Gadget, who is a former Solarian operative who was accused of using 13 civilians as bait to flush out his target. Now, of course, he was the very first, so there wasn't as many safeguards as there will be in the future, but he was the very first. He is the man who the Spectre organization is modeled after, and this just shows what the Spectres come from and what are suspected of them, and how this can be problematic, because the man who was chosen to create the organization was very extreme in his methods. Now I'm going to tell you my final thoughts on the Spectres based on all the information I just presented. I think the Spectres are an organization who are needed to deal with great threats, especially during war. But there needs to be more oversight, as you might have guessed throughout my video. Maybe some lines that can only be crossed in the worst circumstances, like large civilian casualties. Now, due to the work of the Spectres, I think these sort of choices should be decided by the Spectres in the moment that they are taken, so they don't have to wait for authorization, because that is the entire point of the Spectres. But I also think that the Council should look into this later and judge whether or not it was actually justified in that moment. And the Council should stop their preference for not really knowing the exact details of how the Spectres work. They should have oversight and look into Spectres' decisions and their missions and their methods. And although they might not want to know how a particular piece of information or a potential casualty occurred, they need to know that in order to ensure that the Spectres are a good organization that works to minimize deaths but still do what's necessary. Now, before I end the video, I would just like to finish it up by saying I actually really like the idea of the Spectres purely from a gameplay perspective, because it allows you to take a lot of decisions and have a lot of room for doing bad things or good things with a reason for you not to necessarily be removed. So from a purely gameplay perspective, the Spectres are a perfect organization for a character you want to create. But as an in-universe perspective, I think the Spectres should have more oversight. As always, this has been My Opinion Archive. Thank you for watching the video. Please let me know what you think of the Spectres, and if you have any ideas for future videos. I hope you liked this video.